Good evening. My name is Mark DeBacco, and I'm enrolled at Full Sail University in their Creative Writing Master of Fine Arts program. And this is my Mastery Journey timeline. During the course of this presentation, I'm going to take you through the courses that I will be taking at Full Sail University and tell you a little bit about what I hope to get out of each of those courses. So let's get this started. Let me share my screen with you. And there we go. So, my Mastery Journey timeline. Again, I'm enrolled in the Creative Writing MFA program, and this is my journey timeline. The first course I'm taking is Mastery. And what I hope to get out of this is an understanding of what mastery means to me. I also hope to be able to reconnect with my original mind and gain confidence in myself. Now, what exactly does mastery mean for me? Well, I think it's just the exercise of my intended craft. I want to write consistently. I found an interesting article in History Teacher Journal called "None of My History Classes Were Like This: An Experiment in Mastery Pedagogy." And it talks about basically learning by doing. And I think that's what I need to do. In terms of reconnecting with my original mind, I found an interesting article in the Daily Mail. And it talks about how you need to switch off your mature mind. Don't overthink things. Just focus on what you're doing. Gaining confidence in myself. Well, I found an interesting article in Marketing Education Review called Gaining Confidence and Competence Through Experiential Assignments. And I think this is something that will help me gain confidence in myself. The next course is the Art of Visual Storytelling. And what I hope to get out of this course is strengthening my narrative skills, learning to apply imagery to the narrative, and learning to convey emotions through imagery. And I found a very interesting article in DIST Education and Learning Research Journal, which talks about using pictures. And in their study, they used picture books as a means to enhance the narrative skills of younger individuals. And I think this is probably something that I can apply to what I'm doing and trying to think in terms of images. I think it will help out a lot, particularly in this class. Going on to my next one, and I think this is a really key class, character creation and development. I hope to delve into the backstory and history of characters. I want to be able to create a dossier to support the characters' backstories and history, and develop how a character would speak and communicate. This is something that I have a lot of trouble with. I like to write witty dialogue, which is not necessarily applicable to a given character. So it's a little flaw that I have that needs some working. In any event, I did find an interesting article that speaks to a lot of this in the Hollywood Scriptwriter. The article is called "Writing Style That Sells: Show, Don't Tell." And really what it's about is don't have your characters tell us things on the screen. Have the characters show us. And again, goes back to imagery. And I think this is something that will help me along these lines in this particular class. Next course is script analysis and criticism. And what I hope to get out of this class is how to identify and create the traditional Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 in my writing, how to translate this across various media that one might write for, and the basics to create scripts in non-traditional media. I found a really interesting tutorial from the Script Lab that provides some interesting discussion on script structure and talks a lot about how to create the Act 1, 2, and 3 and its various components. And I think it's a very worthwhile tutorial. How to translate across various media. I found a really interesting article in Screen Education about adapting stories or adapting something from other sources to the screen as opposed to original screenplays. And it's called Handled with Care, Adapting Stories for the Screen. In terms of creating scripts for non-traditional media, and this is something that we'll talk about later on as well when we get into the game section, I found a really cool tutorial that is by the featured writer on the game Last of Us, and it is a tutorial that's well worth taking a look at. The next course is episodic and serial writing, which is probably an important thing if you want to work in the motion picture industry. And what I hope to get out of this class is the basic elements of multi-episode storylines, how to create and follow character arcs across episodes, and working with a team in the writer's room. I found a really cool tutorial from Studio Binder on how to create a show Bible and what should go into that. And I think that would be very helpful here. In terms of working with a team in the writer's room, I found this awesome, truly awesome panel discussion that was sponsored by Film Independent Forum, and it's well worth looking at. What they had was several different writers on several different shows, basically telling you about their experiences in the writer's room. It was fascinating, and it's well worth taking a look at. The next class is the Creative Writing Portfolio 1. And in this course, I hope to be able to identify a story to develop into a motion picture script. And frankly, I have a few stories I've already written, and I'm hoping to identify one of those that I can move forward with in terms of a motion picture script. Developing storyboard skills, because I have absolutely none, and developing pitching skills. I found a really nice tutorial online from the Rocket Jump Film School on developing storyboard skills, even for people who have like no drawing skills whatsoever, and how to attack it from that perspective. In terms of the pitch skills, I found a really awesome article in Script Magazine called Pitch Perfect that talks a lot about how you pitch a project. And in this article, they really focused on establishing a relationship with the person you are pitching to. It's an interesting article. Writing for film and animation. Well, I'd like to develop solid plot line skills. I'd like to learn to identify unnecessary sequences for editing, and by editing I mean editing the screenplay, not editing the film or video. And I want to be able to learn to accept criticism and to implement same into subsequent drafts. I found a really interesting article on Scribindi, and it talks about starting a plot or starting a project by just outlining the plot and then fleshing it out from there. And I think it's a really interesting way to start. I found a really interesting tutorial from the Quinnipiac Film Society that talks about rewrites. Their position is every script can use a rewrite, and they talk about ways to identify sequences that really aren't moving the plot along really well, despite the fact that maybe a sequence that you absolutely adore. And in that regard, sometimes, well, we have to kill the ones we love, i.e. take that section out because it does nothing for the plot, despite the fact that we may love it. Writing for games. I got to admit, this is an area that I really have very little interest in. I love to play games, but I have no interest in creating them whatsoever. But I found this really cool tutorial. It features the featured writer of the game Last of Us. And I think it's something worth looking into for this particular course. Multimedia adaptation. I hope to learn the pitfalls of adapting a piece from one media to another, how to best maintain the original plot line in an adaptation, because frankly, it drives me crazy when somebody takes a book and turns it into a motion picture and is not true to the original plot line. If you are going to do that, I can't help but wonder why you even bothered to buy the rights to this book. How to maintain solid characters in an adaptation. And again, this truly, truly wonderful article in Screen Education about handling an adaptation with care. And I think it's worth looking into for adaptation purposes. Advanced visual storytelling. Well, I hope to obtain an understanding of motion picture pre-production process. I want to gain an understanding of how the script evolves in pre-production, and I want to gain an understanding of how principal photography is organized. Many of these topics are covered in the tutorial I talked about earlier from the Quinnipiac Film Society, and it is a tutorial that's well worth having a look at. Creative writing portfolio 2. Well, I hope to learn what makes a writer's portfolio. I hope to learn how potential employers will evaluate a writer. I hope to learn how to further my pitching skills into solid pitching skills. I found an article on Quietly that talks about the portfolio and how you want to build it to represent what you want so that you have your brand. And that's actually something I hadn't really considered. I found a wonderful article on the University of New Mexico website that is in conjunction with their creative writing program, and it provides a rather interesting laundry list of what should be going into your portfolio. And they talk about how employers want to see evidence of the skills you have as a writer in a professional presentation. And I found a really cool article in Public Relations Quarterly about the elevator pitch. By elevator pitch, I mean you happen to run into somebody in an elevator that you want to pitch a project to. And that article was called The 60-Second Pitch, and it's an article that's well worth reading. And our final course is the Business of Creative Writing, and I hope to learn the different avenues to publication. I want to learn how a novel is marketed, and I hope to learn how to secure a literary agent, and I think this is probably one of the key things that I want to learn about. I found an article on Jericho writers that truly addresses almost all of this stuff. And I think it is an article that is well worth reading for anyone who's getting into the creative writing business. Writing industry leaders. Well, at the top of my list is always Stephen King. I found something interesting that I did not know. On his website, he maintains a message board so that you can message him. I imagine he's probably not the guy who's actually reading them. It's probably one of his underlings, but if you want to get a message to Stephen King, you can do so through his website. George R.R. Martin, I couldn't find anything other than his Facebook or his Twitter account to possibly communicate with him through. Dean Koontz, his website has a P.O. box where inquiries can be placed to him. And the last three on that list, Harry Abrams of the Abrams Artist Agency, David Saunders with the Agency for the Performing Arts, and David O'Connor with the Creative Artist Agency, are three of the top literary agents in Los Angeles. And I was lucky enough to be able to get the contact information because I'm a member of Backstage, and twice annually, they publish a listing of all the agents in Los Angeles. So I was able to find them through that. Writers organizations. Of course, at the top of the list is the Writers Guild. Right below that, and I was not aware of this organization, the National Writers Union. I thought the Writers Guild of America was the only writers union, but it turns out there is at least one other, the National Writers Union, and I think that's an organization well worth looking into. I'm big on horror, so the Horror Writers Association is something I would certainly be interested in getting into. And there's also the National Association of Writers and the American Screenwriters Association. If I could put together a personal learning network, who would be in it? Stephen King, Brian Lumley, another fine horror writer. Aaron Sorkin, because he was behind two of my favorite episodic programs, The West Wing and the Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. Robert Towne, because I just love Chinatown. Dean Koontz, again, one of my favorite horror writers. Woody Allen, and I don't mean to be controversial about that one. I don't care anything about his personal life, but I love his writing. I really do. I love his plays and I love his motion pictures. And the only interesting and intriguing and cutting edge company I could think of within the realm of fictional writing is Kindle Direct Publishing, which gives us an avenue to publish. As for the Full Sail University community, I would be interested in the Creative Writing Club, which I've joined, and the Pride Club, which I've joined. I didn't see any other clubs on Full Sail 1 that I would be particularly interested in. Qualities of a mentor that I could admire. Well, I think he or she would need to be a published author. I would hope that he or she would have one bestseller under his or her belt. Someone who teaches or lectures when the schedule allows. Someone who writes for the screen as well. And I say big screen or a small screen, but frankly, I think the best stuff is being done on the small screen these days. What goes onto the big screen is generally just splashy special effects with little plot or character. And hopefully he'd be somebody who supports or is a member of the LGBTQ community. So, summarizing this timeline again and zipping back through the courses. Mastery, the original mind, that's the big one there. The art of visual storytelling, narrative, screen analysis and criticism, I think structure, story structure, episodic serial writing, character arcs, creative portfolio 1, organizing the work, writing for film and television, drafts and rewrites, writing for games, game structure, multimedia adaptation, remaining true to the source, advanced storytelling 2, pre-production, creative writing 2, marketing me, the business of creative writing, getting an agent. And then after that, it's just graduation and starting anew. And if you're interested in looking into any of the sources that I talked about during this little presentation, the references are all here. I would recommend almost all of these tutorials. I found them very interesting, and I think you will too. And I appreciate you giving me a few minutes of your time, and I thank you very much. Good night.